22nd for the Neshoba Regional School Committee. And we will indeed start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So you can rise if you so choose. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everyone. All right. So our first matter of business, I think, goes to Todd for the Mascot update. If that's, wait a second, I'm not even looking at the right document. So sorry. Just kidding. Citizens' comments. I don't see any citizens' comments, do I? All right, so without citizens' comments, now we can move on to new business and the Mascot update. To Todd.
Perfect.
Or to Tanya. I see Tanya.
Yeah, it's gonna go to Tanya. So I know she's fresh off the athletic fields because I don't know, the last time we spoke today, she had about 7 events at the high school this afternoon. So we thank Tanya for joining us tonight, her busy day and her busy afternoon. But we wanted to basically just give you an update in regards to where the Mascot stands, because there's been some progress as it relates to the logo and a few other things, as well as we kind of come to the end of the year and then look ahead to over the summer into next year as we look to that rebranding for the school and the district. So Tanya has put together just a little presentation on where that stands tonight. And then she or I can take any questions that you have. And I think Alita will probably put that presentation up for us. So Tanya, thanks so much for being here tonight. We know how crazy busy you are at any time of the year, but particularly now with warm weather and spring sports. So thanks again.
No problem. Thank you, Alita. So I just wanted to kind of go over where we currently are. So back on April 7th, our school committee voted to accept the name Wolves as our new mascot. Since then, HERD was working on creating those visual identifiers that we could choose from. And with that, the mascot committee worked with HERD, came up with the visual identifiers, and we created a survey for our high school students and our 8th graders in our district to indicate their preference on which logo they like the best. Next slide. So these were the 3 options. We had 1A, 1B, and 1C. And this is, like I said, this is what HERD created with using our school colors and the different, logos that they looked at. So our next slide. So our high school survey results. So we had 480 students respond and 66 staff members. And as you can see by the graph, 66.5% of people who voted thought that 1A was the best logo from our high school population. And our next slide has our middle school. So our 8th grade survey came back with 103 students from across the 3 towns. Our 8th graders responded, and 45.6% thought that 1A was the best logo. Next slide. So right now, our recommended logo design is 1A. And we collected comments too. And I think this really, people thought the school colors looked good. The detail of the wolf, people really like this one the best. And our next steps, our next slide. So right now, HERD is actually working on the font designs. So, will it say Neshoba Regional? Will it say Neshoba Wolves? And what all of this will look like, so we can use it on, uniforms, or if it's, anything with equipment. Is it just the wolf head? Does it say Neshoba in the wolf head? So they're going to come out with the design package that has all of this together. And then once we have that, we'll move forward with going ahead with, the plan for implementing this rebranding. We're talking logos, we're talking uniforms, equipment, the visibility, signs on campus, and also the budgeting piece and how we're going to do all this. So this is kind of our next step. We're hopefully going to have the design package in the next couple of weeks. And then this summer working on the plan moving forward. So again, quick update, but at least we are able to share what the wolf will look like moving forward. If there are any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you for that update, Tanya. And I actually also liked 1A. In my head, I was like, 1A, I like that. So
Yeah, me too.
that's fantastic. I'm wondering what this means in terms of the turf field and either what the timeline or what the cost is to replace either that section, or does the whole turf field need to be replaced as a result? I mean, I don't know how that works.
So, when I reached out to our turf company just to get what would happen to be able to cut out the center of our turf and replace it, it's anywhere between $40,000 and $50,000 when I asked last summer. So again, that could probably be a little more at this point in time, being a year later. However, we're almost at the end of our carpet life. So right now we probably have anywhere between 3 to 5 years left before we should be replacing our carpet. So in my mind, and again, I have not, discussed this with Todd and Pat yet moving forward, this will be part of that plan. But my initial thought is we don't replace that center part of our turf until we replace the carpet. I don't know if it's worth the money to spend that, up front to cut that out. We ruin the integrity of the turf by cutting it out and having to glue a new piece in when we're so close to the end of our turf life. So I think it's one of those, as long as moving forward, our district superintendent, school committee is okay with that moving forward, that's one of the things that we phase out over the next few years.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Tanya? Rich?
Good job to everybody that did that. I think the logo actually looks really good. Not that I'm surprised, but I'm looking at it and I think it looks great. And I just wanted to know, did you work on the howl for the wolf? And could you model that for us, Tanya?
I have not worked on that yet. I did tell Mr. Bates that to be ready for football games announcing next year that we better have a howl as we run onto the field. But no, I have not practiced my howl yet.
Maybe Todd has then.
It's an item on this summer's retreat agenda, so we'll work on that.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, Shawn, go ahead.
Just real quick, and coming sort of late into the game, we're going through the process and then we're going to put a budget, sort of a line item to it. Is that sort of putting the cart before the horse? Because what happens if we get to that point and then all of a sudden it just becomes cost ineffective?
So Tanya, you want me to take that one, or Pat might be able to take that one as well? We've already done some preliminary work. I know Tanya's done some outreach to a variety of companies and vendors. So we've got some outreach out to them as it relates to uniforms as well. And then as it relates to budgeting, that's going to be a lot of the work this year in terms of taking a look at moving forward and potential options for outreach to other companies or donations, and then looking forward to the budget. And we had also talked about doing this obviously in phases in a number of the meetings that we've had with you, because it's certainly something that will need to be phased in over a period of time. But I know Tanya's got a phenomenal head start right now with a vendor that we're moving forward now, and she's working on getting those types of quotes for us. And Pat, if you want to add to that as well, please feel free.
Yes, and this year there's a little bit of money left in the athletic budget, and we're going to start the process with some of those funds at the end of this year. And then next year, we'll probably look at doing it every year. We'll budget some of it, but then we'll try to get ahead of it as we can. And we have some other options that are coming up, some donations that are possibly coming through, and they'll help to soften the blow a little bit as far as like with uniforms and things. So we're very appreciative of that.
Steve.
Yes, as I recall, when we discussed this last summer, we talked about the uniforms for the athletic teams get cycled through, and
Right.
and that we will basically going to do this adoption of a new logo as we cycled through and got new uniforms. For example, varsity football uniforms going to JV or freshman uniforms. And as we cycled through, we were going to do this so that the incremental expense was going to be relatively small. In addition, the turf field, we don't know what that whole complex is going to look like as we move into the design phase of a new high school, if we're allowed to do a new high school. And I think that would be all be built into that particular production, and any of the rebranding that has to go on in the building itself. If it's painting, it's minimal, because we do paint on a cycle anyway. And if it even if we have to do a piece of a wall, once again, we're looking at a new high school. So this is going to take place over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years as we reposition ourselves, without having, I would think, any major plus cost to our budget, because we cycle through the uniforms on a basis, on an annual or semi-annual or every 3 years basis anyway. So you know what, some of them will be wearing things with just the N on it, and some of them will be, and some of the teams will start wearing the new logo as we move ahead.
Yeah, and you're right on, Stephen. I think that's something that, when I look at phasing in, I think some of the things with, if we're going to be moving into a new school, or, we have on the horizon, there's things inside where you tie that into a new building project. You don't do it right now. One thing too is, like I said, Dr. McGuire mentioned, if we can get this uniform deal, it could be, a jump start with getting more teams in a new logo. I'm going to work with the uniforms that do say the word chieftain on them to try to, rotate those out first. I just find it might be tough if you're called the Wolves and it says chieftains across your chest. The other thing too is, part of my plan moving forward is, I would like to be able to sell off old uniforms as we get new uniforms in play. I can't tell you the number of parents and students and alumni that have reached out asking to purchase an old uniform. I just had a softball mom today, as we finished senior day about 10 minutes ago, ask me if she could buy her daughter's uniform for a graduation gift. So I think things like that we'll be able to sell. We won't be able, to make the full amount back, but I think it'll offset things moving forward as well.
Amy?
Tanya, did you get any sense of what impact each one of those logos would have on the cost? Because having been through like a logo change for an employer, it seems like, depending on which choice you go with, can impact the cost. You had mentioned that the one that everybody likes is a little bit more detailed. Does that mean it's going to be more expensive?
So if you were going to be embroidering that wolf head, the embroidery of that would be more expensive. But all uniforms this day and age, everything is sublimated. So you can pick as many colors as you want and whatever design that is, and everything is, printed into that uniform. That's why a lot of our uniforms right now would have like the N logo on a sleeve, the American flag on the other sleeve or on the back, and numerous, usually 3 different colors: the green, the Vegas gold, and the white in those uniforms.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Tanya? I'd just like to say, Tanya, thank you very much for reacting to the decision that this committee made. This was not a choice that you had control over, so I appreciate you being so proactive in doing this on the fly here. I wonder, do you think that you would be able to provide us with some sort of detailed cost analysis maybe in September?
I think so. Yep.
Okay, so that might allay some of the fears or worries for other people.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions about the mascot?
I just want to thank Tanya for, this has been, over a year's long project. This started all with you folks way back, a year ago, and the work that, this committee did in allowing, so many of our constituents to be heard, the people whose lands that was and is to be heard, alumni to be heard. And it was really a thoughtful process to get, so many constituents' voices. So, and to think that this is where we are right now, where we're just now unveiling not only the new mascot, but now the new logo. And so the work ahead of us, obviously is to make that transition. So a huge thank you to the communities, everybody on this Zoom call, Tanya and her team, as well as Herd Strategy, who worked with us on this. So it's a tremendous undertaking. So well done. Thank you, Tanya, and everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so our next matter of business is the subcommittee assignments. So Alita, do you want to share the one that I gave to you, or do you want me to share it?
Alita, your
She's working. I have it right here if it's easier for me to do it. So guys, I just want to say, first and foremost, that in making the subcommittee or completing the subcommittee assignments, it was not necessarily simple. And there were a lot of considerations that I took into account. So among them, just so that you know, is the need to balance our individual workloads so that to make sure that no single one of us was doing too much. It was about your personal preference, and I tried to honor at least some of what each of you requested. It's also about kind of perceived skill set and things that we each think that we can bring to the table. I was trying to also consider experience of the various members of the committee. I tried to balance numbers to the best of my ability within each committee. I also wanted town representation on a couple of the important committees. And I also wanted to do a little bit of bridge building between committees. So for example, Amy is going to be on the communication committee, but she's also the chair of the building committee's subcommittee on community outreach. And so to have her in both of those committees makes a lot of sense to create that bridge. So you guys can kind of see where you have been assigned. And the one thing that I wanted to make mention of is that policy will have Karen and Shawn on it. But I've served on policy for 2 years now, and I will also be serving on it kind of as an ad hoc member, and just to kind of get you guys started and rolling and answer any questions, help you guys understand kind of how that particular committee operates. And therefore you won't feel like you're in the dark.
Looks great, Leah.
Thanks, Rich. Does anybody have any questions? Mike?
So just to clarify what you just said, you will be an ad hoc member of the policy subcommittee just to get that subcommittee rolling, and then you'll step back?
Yes.
Okay, because my only concern was that I think there are 2 of you, but as the chair, you would also have 3 subcommittee commitments, and that is a little concerning, but
yeah, so I won't be
a little bit if you back off from policy after the first few meetings.
Yeah, I wouldn't, I didn't want to overwhelm myself, but I do feel like Karen and Shawn are going to need some help. So I will attend the probably first couple, maybe 3 meetings, just to make sure that they feel comfortable. And as you know, for any and all of us, we can ask each other to attend various subcommittee meetings at any point in time. So, if personnel wanted, somebody to come and make comments or contribute in any way, shape, or form, you and the public are welcome to come to any of the subcommittee meetings at any time. Amy?
Yeah, it looks like we might have a new subcommittee compared to last year, the Cpac Liaison. Could you talk about that?
The Cpac Liaison is actually, we had it last year, and Chairwoman Codianne was our liaison. So this year it will be Brett. And that position is designed, these liaison positions, they're actually not really committees. We just act as kind of advisors or partners to these various other groups within our community. And so the Dear Jay advisory, Sharon volunteered to do that, and she will be interfacing with Elaine, who is still going to be running Dear Jay. And the same thing goes with the Cpac, where Brett can be a nice conduit between Cpac and the school committee. Does that help? Any other questions? Seeing none, we can move on. We have no unfinished business. And that, oh, Alita, go ahead.
We need to vote to accept the subcommittee assignments.
Oh, thanks, Alita. Can I get a motion to accept the subcommittee assignments?
So moved.
I see Steven's box lit up. So Steve, and do I have a second?
Second.
Amy, thank you, Amy. Any discussion?
Thank you for putting that together.
Yeah, thank
and
you
being
for
so
taking it.
considerate of, skill sets and availability.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It looks like a lot of thought went into balancing it on a lot of different levels. So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, you're welcome. I hope it works out for us well. So
Leah, do you want to do the roll call or do you want me to?
I can do it, yeah. Thanks, Lita, though. So let's take our roll call, guys, and I'm going to go alphabetically here from the top. So Amy,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Sharon. She says thumbs up. Steve,
Yes,
myself, yes, and Shawn.
Yes.
I get it.
you're not last anymore, Leah.
Yay, thanks, Shawn. All right, so good to go for that. Thanks, Lita. Again, we have no unfinished business, so we can move on to our next matter, which is business operations. Pat.
So tonight, Alita, can you bring up the results of operations for March? I have a revised version of that report. I had an error in one of my formulas, and I wanted to make sure that this revised version of the report is in the public know. And thank you to Mr. Eichel for helping me find that. Anyway, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Hi, Mike.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy. Go ahead, Mike.
Pat, I hope that this is an appropriate time to ask the question, but this is building off of the small discussion we had about funding the logo change. Is it fair? Is it an accurate statement that we are now in our second year, or will be moving into our second year of free full day kindergarten? And so we will not only be able to reallocate the money that we had previously built in the budget towards free full day K, but we also get some reimbursement that can offset some of those potential new costs. Is that right?
Yes, in fiscal year 22, the state will basically give us in our Chapter 70 funding the additional half of the school day for the kindergarten students. Right now, prior to this, the
Right.
funding was based on a 0.5 student. So now with the no tuition in the full day K, we get full funding for each student. And so that's why we had the stabilization fund to relieve some of the impact on the budget.
And we also can redirect the monies that went towards funding that in the previous budget. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean, like by redirect it.
Well, so this current fiscal year, we had allocated, I think, was it 100,000 or 200,000 as a line item that we will no longer need to allocate.
Exactly. We will
Right.
not, we use some E&D money to fund a piece of this. And we won't need to do that next year.
Great, great. Thank you.
Amy, question?
Yeah, forgive me if I missed it when you were queuing this discussion up, but what was the revision that you?
I had a formula error in, oh, wait a minute. At the high school, because I have to summarize many accounts at the high school. So I corrected it.
Alita, we're seeing your email.
Yeah, you might want to take that down.
You have to go.
Questions for Pat on the operations spreadsheet?
No, thank you.
Okay, where do we go next, Pat?
Okay, Alita, can you bring up April's results of operations? And as you can see, there are a few changes from the previous month, but not many. I would expect that we would probably land at year end at about 950,000. I did a quick budget projection based on things that I know because we're so close to the end of the fiscal year. So I'm pretty sure we're going to probably land at about 950,000, providing everything is as I projected it to be.
Go ahead, Steve.
And theoretically, that money goes back into E&D, right? 'Cause
Yes,
we've
it
taken
does.
out. We've taken out $1 million, we're putting back $1 million approximately.
Basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
But redirecting that money back into E&D is pending the results of operations for May and June, correct?
Correct. I did a very quick, not as detailed as I would for one of these reports. And it's still trending. I basically am doing that every 3 or 4 days to make sure that I'm on track because purchase orders come in and even though the spending is really down at this point in the year, we're still waiting for assessments at the state level. They haven't come out with the final numbers yet. So I'm pretty sure that we'll come out at about 950,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Anything else, Pat?
I think that's about it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, guys. So our next matter is the chairperson update. The only thing that I have to share with you guys really only pertains to our new members. Karen and Shawn, I'm going to be contacting you to set up a new member orientation, which basically you've already been oriented quite a bit already, as you know, the way that the election fell, et cetera. So we'll just be kind of filling any gaps that you might have, and it'll give you an opportunity to ask me any questions. If I don't have answers, I'll find them for you, but I'll be contacting you by email on that.
This is when we get the tattoo, right?
Correct.
Okay, just check.
Amy, did you have a question?
Oh, I just realized I was unmuted, but yes, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to be asking, but I was wondering about when we would be getting an update on the status of the new superintendent contract negotiations or whatever.
Great question.
Yeah.
So that conversation is definitely getting underway shortly to try to finalize the agreement. And we, I can't make any promises at this point in time. We're still at the beginning stage of that negotiation that is very typical for this sort of hire. But we hope to announce shortly. You know, I've been told by Dorothy Presser that these kinds of negotiations can maybe take a week or two at the most, that sort of thing. And, you know, if anybody wants to add to that, please feel free. But there'll be an announcement.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I'm just, you know, asking on behalf of the community who is eager for news.
Indeed, we're all eager, so it's exciting. And again, thank you to Todd for all of your work in the main office and your team, you know, bringing our year to a successful landing.
We're holding down the fort until he arrives. And I did speak with him on Friday to congratulate. And I know he's excited to get going. So thank you all.
That's great. Okay. So now I will move on to our assistant superintendent's report. So Todd, you can take it away.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And first of all, you know, a hello and a welcome to Karen and Shawn, new members. I know Shawn was here for one meeting and Karen's been involved all last week with the superintendent search, kind of trial by fire, I'm sure. So welcome to both of you. It's great to meet you and have you here. Just a few updates today as we kind of finish up the year, and as luck would have it, today was an early release day for professional development in the district, and it was a district-based day focused around transitions. And as you know, we went over the updated district improvement plan in our last meeting, and we wanted our final PD day in June here at the end of the year to really focus on that transition from this year to next year, which is a really big one. So today's day was focused on transition discussions within and across each of our buildings, but there was a lot of cross-pollination across buildings, because as we see elementary kids move up to middle school and our middle schoolers move up to high school, there were a lot of cross conversations going on between schools as well as within our buildings. So we created a guiding questions document for staff in order to frame those discussions today for the purpose of conversation and setting the stage for teaching at grade level next year. Virtual transition discussions were held between 8th grade teachers in the high school today. That was this afternoon. And in addition, social emotional learning facilitator teams met to sketch out the focus topics for next year's 4 early release professional development sessions that would be district wide, and began to lay out the content for the first session of that in December. So that work is already started. There were some great conversations going on, you know, with our 8th grade teams, with our high school, so that there's a smooth transition for our middle schoolers moving on to the high school, as well as at grade level in each of our buildings. So we're really excited to have begun this work already. We're also going to be focusing on some of that work in our summer academy, as you know, will be taking place directly right after the school year gets out starting on June 23rd. So again, our focus really is on transitioning and social emotional learning. We're going to be weaving the diversity, equity, inclusion topics into that as well as we begin next year. So productive day today. We continue with Mcas testing. As I reported out at the last meeting, that continues to progress throughout the school district. It will continue into this month, for the first couple weeks of this month. And as I mentioned in an earlier meeting, those tests have been shortened and modified, but we are using them as formative assessment benchmarks, and parents and families can be doing the same thing. And I had the opportunity to visit each school over the past week. It's very clear we have the appropriate infrastructure and support in place for all students, including our remote learners. So thank you to Suchi and his team. If you recall, we increased the technological infrastructure and our bandwidth due to COVID, and that has been a tremendous help, even with the MCAS as it is all online, and to also be facilitating our remote learners who are taking it remotely. So that's been super helpful. And again, we're going to use these assessments and these data as ways to gauge and reflect on student learning and progress over this past year to inform our work moving forward. So we'll be wrapping the MCAS testing up within the next week or so. COVID safety, again,
Todd,
yeah,
Todd,
absolutely.
I'm so sorry. I just want to interrupt you really quickly. Alita, I think Amy is trying to get back into the meeting. If you could look for her, that would be great. Thank you. Keep going, Todd. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Just a reminder around COVID safety, the weather is getting warmer. We are still required to, keep our mitigation strategies in place. That includes masking, that includes social distancing indoors. Keep in mind the new guidance that had come out earlier this month allows students K through 12, if they're outdoors, to not wear masks as well as not social distance. But as the days warm up, we are very aware of making sure we are getting kids mask breaks. As you know, we have tents at every single one of our campuses. We're obviously creating times for students to be in media centers where there is air conditioning and other places where there is, if there are not in the classrooms. I was over at Florence Sawyer last week during the 90-degree day, checking in on that third floor. That tends to be our hottest floor and our most warm. So Principal Bates and his team were on top of things, providing breaks, providing water, and those kinds of things. So we know that kids are still masking. We know we're still focused on social distancing, et cetera, in the buildings, but we are putting in a variety of strategies to make sure that we're taking a look at the temperatures and the warmth of each day, and we'll be continuing to check in. And then finally, just a huge congratulations to the class of 2021. They finished up their year this past week. I was over at the high school when they were beginning their parade, and I think I got out of the building just in time before I was trampled per se. But that was fun to see. And we want to thank everyone for their efforts, their versatility, their patience, their flexibility. This class in particular was impacted not only last year, but also this year. We're very aware of that. We're tremendously excited to see them end their year with some of these mitigation strategies relaxing a little bit. The past 16 months have been difficult navigating so many of those changes that have been associated with learning for this class. College applications changed, obviously, and rites of passage changed. This entire class have gained an enhanced tool set as they move on to the next phase in their lives. We thank our incredible high school staff and faculty for shepherding this class through a very difficult time period and continually finding ways to engage each and every learner and seeing them through their successful finish this year. And to our families and parents, we are tremendously grateful for the support that you provided your children and our work with them to see them to this successful finish. So we'll be excited to see them all graduate in person on June 12th. That's an exciting event coming up. So congratulations to that class. And I know that they're going to be, have more tools and more preparation than probably any class that's ever graduated, given the flexibility and versatility they've needed in the past year and a half. So that's my update, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Todd.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Todd? Seeing none.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll move on. All right, so at this point in time, I think that we have a motion for the consent agenda. Is that right, Mike? Did I give those, or do you have those handy?
I can quickly look that up. If that was sent to me, I don't know. I don't recall it being sent to me, but you can look it up.
Thanks. Hang on, everybody. Sit tight.
From me, Mike, it came from me, Mike, so you might want to look for any email from me.
Dr. McCarthy has her hand up while we're
Oh,
waiting
right
for
ahead,
Mike.
Mary.
So yesterday I pointed out 3 corrections and to the 25th, 26th, and 27th. And I just want to make sure that those corrections are made. 2, have they been made? All 3, Alita? Okay, good.
They've been made but not reposted, so we'll just approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you.
I do have the motions. Thank you for sending them, Alita. So I move to approve the consent agenda of June 2nd, 2021, containing the draft meeting minutes of May 19th, May 24th, May 25th, May 26th, and May 27th, 2021, and the warrants of June 4th, 2021.
Second.
Mike, can you just add as amended, because the minutes were amended?
Sorry, do you need me to reread the motion?
Does he need to reread it, Joe?
No, and the corrections have already been made that Dr. McCarthy had requested, but I did want to say one thing to the chair in regards to any future changes to minutes, at least that I do, because most of those minutes, other than the 24th and the 19th, were done by me. I would request that any changes to be made, at least to the minutes that I prepare, the changes be made here by motion or by request during the meeting. It's a lot more efficient. If there are mistakes, as typos, is always going to find those in minutes. Bring your corrections to the meeting and we'll make the corrections one right here. I don't want to be doing one at a time and having several emails coming in and redrafting these minutes. So if you could extend me that courtesy, I'd be most appreciative. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Joe. That seems reasonable. So Mike, if you could just add the two words as amended.
Sure. Would you like me to reread the motion then?
You don't need to. Just say minutes as amended.
Minutes as amended.
Thank you. And then Rich, did you have, we have a second. Is that correct?
Brett?
Thank you, Brett. Discussion. Rich, why don't you start?
I was just thinking, Joe, would it be good to receive those corrections in advance, but we make the motion in the meeting, so you at least are aware of what they are? Because sometimes people make suggestions and because they don't understand the intent of what was written or they misremember something, that kind of thing.
My request would be to preserve all changes, amendments, modifications, deletions, alterations, anything to this meeting. Technically, when I get the corrections, I'm supposed to remake the corrections and then we're supposed to repost. Leah didn't repost them. Thank you for that, because I only did this one time. But my preference would be, and there's not going to be a lot of minutes that I make. You can, Leah can do whatever she wants, but the minutes that I make, I would ask as a courtesy to simply bring your requests, modifications, alterations, deletions to the meeting. I'll make them right here as we speak. So
Thanks for clarifying.
Any other questions on the consent agenda motion? Seeing none, I will move to the.
Sharon has her hand up.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Sharon. Go right ahead.
It's okay. I was just wondering, the modifications that Mary had suggested, was that in order of events? That it seemed like some of the, all of the specifics were correct, but they were a little bit out of order. Was that what you had asked for, Mary?
So there were two typos, and I asked, pardon me?
My correction was just grammatical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then I asked that I be referred to as Dr. McCarthy and not just Mary McCarthy. And because I have a doctoral degree in education, and as Dr. Jill Biden has made perfectly clear, everything we could do to elevate the profession of education, we should do. So I don't go out in the world and say Dr. McCarthy, but here, in regard to education, I would respectfully ask, people can call me Mary, but anything in writing, that's why I have Dr. McCarthy. So that was the other one.
Okay, so on, I believe it was Monday night's notes. I don't know who wrote those notes. I think that some of the order of events was a little bit mixed up. You have to bear with me if I can try and get that up on my computer and find it now. You might want to move on because it's going to take me a minute.
Okay, so anything else that anybody had a question on with regard to any of the items in the consent agenda? So I don't see any. So Sharon, I'm sorry that you feel on the spot. Don't feel that way. Take your time.
Pressure.
Nope, no worries.
Leah, what email were they in? Did you send it?
It would have been in the meeting packet on the website.
No, all right.
Yeah, they're posted under meeting materials, Sharon.
Those are the minutes I took.
Okay. I'm getting there.
I think the ones that were emailed to us were executive session minutes.
Oh,
So I don't know if you're thinking about that, Sharon, or.
yeah, so the one.
No, it was, let me see, I think I found it. Oh, no. Go back.
This is for the interviews, right?
It was the reorganization meeting first, and then the interviews was Monday. First interview was Monday. If it's a problem with the reorganization.
So I think it's just ordering that. I mean, it's just in the devil's in the details, I guess, and it's really just an order thing. But the way it is written, the vote is reversed. So
I think I know what you're talking about, where it's listed that Amy nominated Leah Vivirito first, and then it says that Joe nominated Stephen second.
Right. But then, so that part, I mean, I think that is reversed. But I think what didn't make sense in the notes, and the reason I wanted to ask about it is that if we voted for Leah first, and that vote passed, then would we have voted for Steve afterwards? I think that order is important because we made one vote and the vote didn't pass, so then we made another vote. Or am I wrong?
No, you're right. I'm looking at it right now. It's the May 24th meeting minutes on the meeting materials webpage. And
Yeah, that's exactly how the votes occurred.
We voted on Steve first.
Yeah, we did vote on Steve first.
And I mean, that matters largely because the vote ended up being different, very different, the second vote.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a good point for the record to note the order that the nominations and the votes were taken in. And so can we just amend this particular set of minutes to?
Yeah, we already made the motion to amend the minutes, so this amendment can be included in that motion.
Thank you, Alita.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other comments about any of the minutes or the warrants? All right, guys, so seeing that, I'm gonna do the roll call. I'm sorry, did I see a hand, Amy? Is that your hand? No, and I can't hear you again, Amy. Were you muted? You're all set. Okay. All right, no more hands on the consent agenda? All right, we're gonna roll call. So Amy, in favor of the motion?
Yes. Yep.
Brett?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Myself, yes, and Shawn.
Yes.
So the motion passes. Now to subcommittee reports. Budget and warrant, is there a report?
No, you heard it earlier with Ms. Maroney.
Great. Personnel.
And again, we haven't met, so there's no report.
And policy, there is no report. Communication.
Sorry, no report. We'll just be meeting next week to approve final minutes, but no report tonight.
Okay. Let's see. School Building Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The School Building Committee met yesterday, and we approved the final submission for the OPM's request for services and the advertisement. Just to give you a little bit of the timeline here, the RFS did go to the Central Register last week, but the publication of same was to be initiated today, both in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette and in Combis. So the committee did meet last night, sort of on the run, and approved the submission. So from a timeline perspective now, we should be looking to secure our OPM on or about the 7th of July, at which time our selection will then be turned over to MSBA for their meeting first week of August for approval of our OPM. So after August, we should have our OPM in place, provided there's no issues with regards to our submission to MSBA, and we should be starting the design process, or at least the feasibility study process of this build project.
So exciting. Very exciting. Lots of hard work being done on that committee. So for anyone in the community listening, watching, please know that that group is hard at work moving the process forward. Are there any questions here about the building committee, considering its importance?
Madam Chairman, I just want to make one point that one of the things we did discuss yesterday at our meeting had to do with the selection process for the OPM, and that's going to be handled mainly by our OPM search committee. And I wanted to make sure that they got proper recognition here tonight. That subcommittee is chaired by Mr. Robert Sikansky. He's the select board chair for the town of Bolton, and Mr. Ken Fromer from Lancaster, and Mr. Scott Gibson of Bolton, ably assisted none other than our own Patricia Maroney. And one of the point I do want to make is that by going through the membership of the OPM search committee, you might have noticed that Stow was absent. It was conspicuous by its absence. And as I mentioned at the meeting last night, we are down one member on the building committee. And I have communicated with Dr. McGuire. He has some names of some individuals who were interested at the time the committee was being put together. So we are looking for somebody who has construction, engineering, architectural design background, and hopefully Dr. McGuire will be able to source us somebody from Stow who can fit that bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thanks for that. And the OPM, I don't know if Joe said this, we're so steeped in acronyms. That's the owner's project manager. This is the person we're trying to hire who will be our representative in the building process and assist us in so many ways. And from what I understand, the process really takes off as soon as that OPM is selected by us and approved by MSBA, that we'll start really cooking and talking to the community, getting people involved.
That appointment, that finalization from MSBA should be the first week of August. And one of the points that Mr. Sikansky, as the subcommittee chair, brought out, that, or excuse me, our attorney brought out, Attorney Mello, was that even though we're looking to have a final selection by the 7th of July, it really takes the MSBA about a month or so to review our submission. So that's why there's a big gap between the 7th of July and the first week of August. But the committee will be meeting again on the 14th. So if anybody has any interest in attending, we'll be meeting on the 14th of July.
Excellent. Thanks again, Joe.
Yep.
So the Dear Jay committee, our fierce leader, Elaine, is no longer here, but this is going to be a great opportunity if and whenever necessary, where our liaison, Sharon, can bring updates to the committee on behalf of that advisory. Anything from the audit advisory?
No, we're still patiently waiting, Pat, as well, for the audit to come. So any day now. Thanks, Pat, for being so patient.
All right, great. So I wonder what items might we want to consider for the next or future agenda. So that is a big ask. We do have a planning calendar that we're going to be working on at our August retreat. But is there anything that I should be aware of or that Alita can jot down just so that we don't forget? Go ahead, Mike.
Maybe the status of in-person school committee meetings. particularly starting off our next year, assuming all conditions are okay. And that might be something that would require probably a robust discussion, but might be that the time is right.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that if and when the governor lifts his decree about allowing public bodies to meet virtually, then we'll have no choice. We'll need to move to those in-person meetings regardless of what we can make work. So yeah, I'm sure that that's probably something, Todd, that over the summer, maybe your team can consider.
Yeah, and we will continue to do our updates as it relates to those things through the summer, just like, you know, we did throughout the year and like we did last summer. So anytime there's new guidance that comes out or anything, we'll make sure that we get, you know, those memos out, and Lisa Gilbicki, you know, will be in contact with boards of health, et cetera. So we'll continue with that practice regularly through the summer.
Great. I would actually add that Tanya has said she thinks that she'll be able to bring to us some sort of budget analysis for the mascot. So that should probably go on our September agenda. Any other things? Yeah, Todd.
I know that there are some groups who would like to give an update on the research that they've done as it relates to travel, domestic and global travel. So that I had kind of said, let's why don't we put that off until one of the very first meetings in the fall. So I know I have a few of them, as the Nature's Classroom field trip, the DC field trip, and the high school was doing its research. And we'll probably also have, you know, greater guidance as it relates to travel. So it would be great if we could get that on one of the first meetings in September.
That sounds right. Yeah. Is that a hand, Joe? Go ahead.
That is, Madam Chairman. Yes, I would like to request that we also add to at least the September, first meeting in September. I'd like to get a clarification and an update on where we stand on this long stemming issue regarding the regional school agreement. The regional school agreement as posted still has the old compilation of the district committee. I asked a year ago if we could probably to amend that, but I also understand there was going to be some referral perhaps to one of the subcommittees to look at the regional school agreement. We haven't really done much on it, and if there's not going to be any update, that's fine. If there is going to be an update on the regional school agreement, I would love to know before there's any referral to any subcommittees, what exactly are we looking at to update, other than the number of members of this committee?
Yeah, absolutely. Mary, do you want to jump in?
Just to say that basically there is housekeeping to do in regard to an organization of the way the information is presented in the whole agreement. And so, so the plan is at this point that that Pat and I would work and do as much as we could, and then come up with a recommendation, which will probably have to do with you know, our legal counsel, because as everybody knows, any change to the agreement, the regional agreement, even changing, you know, from 8 to 11 members has to go to the towns. And so this wasn't the year to be able to complete that, Joe. I had thought that would be all set by now, but that hasn't been the case. So planning will go on over the summer, and I'll continue. I'm willing to continue to take a role in that. And then the next step would be a regional agreement committee with representation for the 3 towns. So, and to continue to work with DESE and the people there. So it is not forgotten by any means, and should have more to talk about maybe by the time that we meet in the workshop.
Well, Madam Chair, if you do it at the workshop or you do it at our first meeting in September, makes no difference to me. But what I'm still waiting, and it's been over a year now. I've heard that there are issues that need to be addressed, some housekeeping matters, some cleaning up here, but I haven't heard any specifics. And I would dearly love to hear some specifics as to what what needs to be addressed in the agreement. And I don't ask that as a member of this committee. I ask it as a voter of the district. I mean, that was voted on by the district. I look at it as a constitution, as almost like a sacred document. And I would disagree with my colleague from Bolton. I do believe that the committee has authority under the regional school agreement to change the number of members of the district committee, which is one of the limited areas in that agreement that we have authority to change. But other than that, I mean, before we start looking at, and I look at it like a constitution, before we start looking at changes, I'd like the committee to get some specifics on what we're looking to change. I know that there are people in Lancaster who are looking at that submission date for our budget, and they want to move that up as opposed to back. But I mean, other than that, I would really dearly love to know specifically, I want to do it here, either at the summer retreat or in September, the specifics, the particular provisions that need to be addressed, what the issue is and why we need to address them. I don't want to get a DESI representation like, oh, you should update it. Tell me specifically what needs to be updated before we go back to the voters of our district and say, so this is what we're going to change our constitution. I call it constitution.
Absolutely, Joe, I totally agree with you. And whereas we did have the authority to change the number, we cannot change anything in the written agreement until, because that's an amendment, just to even to change from 8 to 11. So the recommendation from the people that we've been working with at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is to bring our agreement into compliance with any state and DESI laws. And so we have a lot of that, and it's very, very detailed, but there's no reason to bring that amount of detail to a regional committee yet. We should straighten out as much as we can. And I'd be happy to share that with you so that you could see that, and then we bring it to a regional committee. So there's a step there. And this is by no means forgotten. But I'm still speaking.
It's not on the agenda. It's not on the agenda. It's not on the agenda. You know, I just asked for it's not on agenda. It's not, shouldn't be even discussing it. It's not on the agenda. We shouldn't be discussing it. All I asked for to put it on the agenda for September, and I'll raise a point of order, Madam Chair. It's not on the agenda.
So you made the request. We're going to
Yes,
put it on the agenda.
Don't need to discuss it.
We do not need to discuss anything more. So that's fine. And Mary, you and I, please include me over the summer as a member, former member and ad hoc member of policy.
I will.
Amy, another item?
Yeah, I'd like to add an update or add to the agenda the student representation on the school committee. I know we have a policy. I was trying to think back to the policy that we have, and I think the timing was that the new members for next year should be elected like in June of this year.
Yeah, so Todd, I think you tell us what you would, you know, if that's perhaps something that you would handle because it's school-based.
Excuse me, it certainly can. If we'd like to, I don't know if we'd like to wait until the new principal might be in place, or we could, you know, if that's something that we would like to look into and have the summer to do that, to have somebody join us in the fall. Or it may be that we wait a meeting or two if the, you know, the sheet there needs to be some time, or we could also, you know, certainly ask the staff or ask the administration over there for, you know, recommendations, or whether it would be a principal pick. I know in the past we've talked about it would be a selection from the building principal. But we could certainly get that ball moving for sure.
Yeah, and I can, yeah, there's the policy that we rewrote is pretty specific about selections. So
right.
You know, throw that onto your kind of radar, and then we could also bring it back up in September for sure, Amy. That'd be great. And if I don't have the specific, I probably do have the specifics around that, and I'll make sure that we adhere to that and move forward. I can send it to you too. Thank you. Something else, Amy?
Yeah, my second agenda request was whether we should have, and maybe this is an item for the workshop, whether we could talk about the timing of the meeting, kind of related to what Mike brought up. If we're going to be meeting in person, perhaps considering a different time to meet, pushing it back to 7, but we can talk about specifics. I just want to see if we can get that on the agenda.
Excellent. Thanks, Alito. Yeah, we'll add that to the to-do list. Any other items for the next or future agenda? All right. Seeing none, we are going to now move to the next area of our agenda here. Alita, are we going to come back to the meeting? Or we're going to adjourn from executive session, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
All right. And so, Mike, I think you have this motion as well.
Sure, I move to go into executive session at 7:05 PM pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant in aid requirements. Review of executive session minutes of February 10th, 2021, Session A and B, March 24th, 2021, Session A and B, April 7th, 2021, and April 16th, 2021. In accordance with Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 22F, G. Executive session to include Dr. McGuire, school committee will adjourn in executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rich. I don't think we accept discussion on this kind of a motion. So
To the contrary, Madam Chairman, you absolutely asked for discussion as to whether or
Oh,
not it's
okay,
appropriate
thank
to
you,
it.
Jeff.
But I don't think there's anybody who's going to object to it.
Okay, good. No discussion, anyone? All right. Amy, in favor of going to executive session?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Brett,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Yes.
Joe. Joe, was that a yes? I'm sorry.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mike,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Sharon,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
myself, yes, and Shawn.
Yes.
All right. We are now